From the moment Clara Reynolds stepped onto the platform at London's Paddington Station, a sheen of nostalgic glamour clung to everything in sight. The Belgravia Belle, an impeccably restored 1920s steam train, exhaled curls of ivory smoke into the October air, while porters in brass-buttoned jackets bustled about with leather suitcases. Clara's heart beat that extra, familiar tempo it always adopted, when a new blog entry was already writing itself in her head. All aboard the Belle of British Rails. The crisp scent of coal, the glossy maroon carriages, the promise of a cosy journey north to York, all of it felt designed for her readers, who craved her blend of wanderlust and gentle intrigue. She made her way to Carriage C, the designated observation lounge, where velvet armchairs faced generously wide windows. A brass placard by the door listed the 19 passengers, and Clara's name appeared somewhere in the middle, directly beneath Lady Viola Aldridge, and above Mr. and Mrs. Jasper Willoughby. As she skimmed the list, a flash of topaz at the periphery caught her eye. An exquisite necklace draped around Lady Aldridge's neck, its commanding centre stone glowing as though lit from within. It looked antique, expensive, and, in Clara's mind, just the kind of detail that made a blog post sing. Within minutes of settling, Clara pulled out her notebook, intent on capturing first impressions. A soft, perfumed breeze announced Lady Aldridge's arrival in the lounge, escorted by her taciturn maid, Mrs. Greaves. The older woman's snowy hair was coiffed into perfect pin curls, and despite her advanced age, Clara guessed late 70s, she glided rather than walked. The necklace swung gently, casting sunbursts on the teak-panelled walls. Clara smiled, and Lady Aldridge nodded in civil acknowledgement before lowering herself into an armchair. "Lovely piece," Clara ventured. "It was my grandmother's," the lady replied, fingers brushing the topaz. "Been in the family since Crimea. Far too ostentatious for midday, I'm sure, but I've promised the Yorkshire Historical Society a display at their gala tonight. I daren't leave it in my luggage." Clara's blogger senses tingled. A priceless heirloom on a train built for intrigue. The line between travel diary and detective novel felt deliciously thin. She returned to her seat just as the whistle shrilled, and with a chug and a lurch, the Belle glided away from London's red brick sprawl and toward countryside greens. By tea-time, Clara had taken stock of the other passengers. In the dining car, Professor Hugo Sandwich, a name Clara silently applauded, pored over botanical sketches while methodically demolishing a scone. 2 cabins down, the Tallulah twins, identical sisters with matching auburn bobs, spoke to each other in a theatrical stage whisper about once-in-a-lifetime adventures. There was also Mr. Felix Durant, a fast-talking antique dealer whose cufflinks winked on every flamboyant gesticulation, and a weary young governess, Miss Charlotte Haynes, who shepherded her charge, a solemn boy of 9 named Thomas, between lessons and the promise of hot chocolate. At precisely 4, tea was served in the observation lounge, fine porcelain cups, lemon wedges, and shortbread that crumbled like snowflakes. Clara balanced her saucer, listening to wheels clatter along the track, while Lady Aldridge regaled a small audience, Mr. Durant, 1 twin, and the newlyweds, about the necklace's military exploits. "Imagine," she declared. "Smuggled from Sevastopol to Portsmouth, sewn into a cavalry officer's coat lining. It survived war, revolution, and 2 questionable marriages. I dare say it can survive a train journey." The passengers chuckled approvingly, but Clara noticed Durant's interest linger a fraction too long on the topaz. Professor Sandwich, from a corner table, hummed thoughtfully. Night settled early. As stars salted the sky, the bell passed market towns lit by warm lamplight. Clara, notebook filled, prepared to turn in, but decided on one last stretch. Walking the corridor to her sleeper cabin, she paused outside Lady Aldridge's door. Light glowed beneath the threshold, and muffled voices drifted, Lady Aldridge's and Mrs. Greaves's, embroiled in a small disagreement about whether the necklace should be stored in the cabin safe. The maid's tone sounded anxious, the lady's immovable. Clara shrugged and continued to her own door, envisioning tomorrow's breakfast, perfect soft-boiled eggs, and perhaps a quote from the professor for historical spice. She had just slipped into her pyjamas when commotion erupted. A frantic knock, then Mrs. Greaves's voice, shrill and cracking. "Help! Someone! Help!" Clara sprang into the corridor. Passengers spilled from cabins like startled birds. Lady Aldridge, pale beneath her rouge, clutched her throat where the topaz had rested only an hour earlier. "It's gone," she gasped. "My grandmother's necklace. Gone." Conductor McVee, a barrel-chested Scot whose silver whistle now hung forgotten against his vest, arrived and quickly restored order. They convened in the observation lounge, its plush serenity now punctured by tension. Clara's pulse raced. Mystery was no longer a charming blog flourish, but a reality inside 60 tons of speeding steel. "Let's keep calm," McVee advised. "We're crossing open countryside. No one could have left the train. The culprit is among us." His statement settled like dust on a polished tabletop. Eyes darted. Mrs. Willoughby made a soft whimper. Thomas, the boy, stared at the floor, delighted or terrified. Clara couldn't tell. Lady Aldridge, composed but icy, insisted every sleeper be searched. McVee agreed, but asked for a witness to observe each inspection. Clara felt a dozen gazes land on her, as if she were a neutral arbiter, neither staff nor aristocrat. "Miss Reynolds," McVee prompted. "You're a journalist of sorts, aren't you?" "Travel blogger," she corrected automatically, then nodded. "I'll observe." They began in cabin order. The systematic searches unearthed nothing more scandalous than the professor's hoard of pressed ferns and Mr. Durant's cache of novelty cufflinks. When it came time to inspect Clara's own compartment, she felt oddly exposed, yet confident her possessions were innocent. Indeed, the conductor found only camera gear, notebooks, and an emergency chocolate bar. By midnight, they stood again in the lounge, exhausted. The necklace remained missing. "Perhaps," Professor Sandwich mused, polishing his spectacles. "It is not yet hidden at all, but travelling, as it were, on some intermediary person." Durant scoffed. "Meaning what? The thief is still carrying it? Amateurish." "Unless," Clara said, thinking aloud, "they intend to disembark at York and vanish into the city before anyone's the wiser." McVee grimaced. "We arrive at 9:30 tomorrow. That leaves precious little time." A sleepless hush overcame the bell as passengers returned to their cabins. Clara, however, parked herself in a corner of the lounge, notebook open. She began a 2-column list, facts and questions. Fact, necklace seen at tea time, 4 p.m. Fact, quarrel between Lady A and Mrs. Greaves about storage. Fact, Durant watched necklace avidly. Question, was cabin door locked? Question, motives. Money, certainly, but also debt, desperation, or thrill. Halfway down the page she added, no forced entry, inside job. At 2 a.m, she found herself staring out the window at moonlit fields, train wheels clacking in hypnotic rhythm. She remembered something the Tallulah twins had said earlier. "Picture it, Tilly, our next post, steam, scones, and stolen jewels." It was surely a joke. but it had been spoken before the disappearance. Could they have been teasing about a prank, or was it a slip? Clara decided on interviews at first light. Breakfast in the dining car had the strained politeness of a drawing room after a family argument. The air smelled of coffee and suspicion. Clara approached the Tallulah twins, Tilly and Millie, who sat side by side slicing kippers. "Last night," Clara began, "you joked about stolen jewels. Had you heard rumours that Lady Aldridge travelled with valuables?" Millie dabbed her lips. "Darlings, it was all over the carriage. She couldn't stop talking about it." "I see. Did either of you leave your cabin after 9? "Only to fetch hot water for Coco," Tilly said. "We brought a thermos back, Scout's honour." Their answers matched, but their alibis rested solely on each other. Clara jotted notes. Next, she cornered Durant outside the pantry. "Mr. Durant, you're an antique dealer. Surely the necklace tempted you." He laughed, though his eyes remained sharp. "I trade in porcelain snuff boxes, not jewel smuggling. And besides, anything that famous is impossible to fence." "Where were you between 9 and 11? "In the card room with Sandwich and young Thomas." After a beat, he added, "Check the logbook. We were bidding peanuts on whist. I lost terribly." Professor Sandwich confirmed it during his own interview, adding an anecdote about Thomas's surprising strategic mind. So far, Durant seemed accounted for. Clara visited the governess, Miss Haynes, who was drilling Thomas on arithmetic in an empty compartment. Miss Haynes looked exhausted. "I was with Thomas all night," she insisted, "except when I stepped out to ask the porter for more blankets." "Time?" 10:30. Thomas was half asleep. I was gone 2 minutes. Thomas offered a solemn nod. Clara thanked them. Finally, she knocked on Lady Aldridge's door. The old woman sat in a satin dressing gown, neck pale without the necklace's golden glow. "Please," she said before Clara could pose a question. "Find my piece. It is my legacy. My heirs, my niece, are counting on its safe arrival." "Lady Aldridge," Clara replied gently, "I need to know whether anyone besides Mrs. Greaves knew your combination for the cabin safe." She hesitated. "I may have mentioned it to my solicitor last week, but no one here." "And Mrs. Greaves? My maid of 30 years would never betray me." Yet Clara recalled the maid's agitation. She made a private note. By noon, the bell chuffed through mist-veiled moors. Clara convened with the conductor in his office, a cramped nook of varnished oak. "I wish we could delay arrival," McVee said, "but the tracks ahead are booked solid. We can't slow more than 10 minutes." Clara exhaled. "Then we must flush out the thief before York." She played with her pen, knuckles tapping. An idea bloomed, part deduction, part performance. "I need the PA system," she said. 10 minutes later, her voice sailed through every carriage. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? I have encouraging news regarding the Aldridge necklace. Conductor McVee and I have arranged for railway police dogs trained to detect gemstones to board at the next water stop in 1 hour. A thorough sweep will be conducted. Anyone still carrying the necklace will be found. I suggest the guilty party discreetly leave the item in the luggage car or hand it to staff to spare themselves public embarrassment." She clicked off, heart thrashing. There were no gemstone dogs, but the thief didn't know that. She stationed herself with McVee by the only corridor leading to the luggage car, a passageway seldom used in daylight. 20 minutes passed, passengers reading or sipping tea, striving for normalcy. Tendrils of steam grazed windows as the engine laboured up a gentle gradient. Clara kept watch. At the 22nd minute, Mrs. Greaves rounded the corner, her starched cap askew, clutching a small embroidered pouch. She froze at the sight of Clara and McVee. The maid's knuckles whitened around the pouch. I'm taking her ladyship's toiletries to be refilled. May I? Clara extended her palm. Reluctantly, the pouch changed hands. Inside, nestled in lavender sachet, gleamed the topaz necklace. Mrs. Greaves slumped. She wouldn't listen, the maid whispered, eyes glassy. She insisted on wearing it openly, inviting danger. I only meant to hide it until we reached York. Clara's stomach knotted with sympathy belied by triumph. Her gamble had worked. Still, something nagged. If Greaves's motive was protection, why act so secretively instead of fetching the conductor? Clara decided to probe further. In McVee's office, Mrs. Greaves confessed she had removed the necklace while Lady Aldridge slept lightly, intending to lock it in the train's strongbox, but losing her nerve. I feared being accused, she murmured, so I hid it among my things. Then your announcement about dogs. Well, I panicked. It seemed plausible, but Clara's reporter instinct sensed a missing puzzle piece. The maid's story lacked one crucial element. How did she circumvent the safe's combination? Lady Aldridge claimed only she and the maid knew it, but admitted telling her solicitor last week. Unless the lady had simply forgotten sharing it with someone else. Elderly memory can falter. Clara returned the necklace personally, letting Lady Aldridge bask in relief. Poor Greaves, the lady sighed. Such loyalty, but dramatic tendencies. I won't press charges. The case appeared closed, yet an itch persisted. Clara couldn't publish a half-truth. She stationed herself in the observation lounge to compose a draft, hoping reflection would untangle doubts. As she typed, Thomas wandered in, clutching a chess set. "Miss Reynolds, would you play?" "Maybe later," Clara said absently. "Doing some work." Thomas set his board on the table, lining pieces with meticulous care. "I like trains," he remarked. "All the compartments are like puzzle squares. If the king tries to hide, the knight will always corner him eventually." Clara looked up, struck by his analogy. Her mind jumped. Puzzle squares, compartments, secret movement. A new hypothesis formed so quickly she gasped. She rushed to find Professor Sandwich, who was jotting botanical notes outside his cabin. "Professor, last night you played cards with Durant and Thomas?" He nodded. "Until about 11. And after?" "I returned here. Why?" "What botanical specimen are you studying?" He blinked behind spectacles. "Arary alpine fern from the Cairngorms. Why?" "Because," Clara said, eyes narrowing, "ferns don't fluoresce. Yet I saw your sketches glowing faintly when I passed your table at breakfast, like mineral dust." The professor swallowed. "Phosphorescent ink, purely for emphasis. Or to reveal counterfeit jewels under certain light." Clara's heartbeat thundered. "I think you created a replica of the necklace, quartz perhaps, painted with phosphor, so that in dim lamplight Lady Aldridge wouldn't notice the swap until morning. That would leave the real necklace free to travel in another compartment." McVee, summoned, stood agog as Clara outlined her theory. She explained how, during the staged commotion, the professor could hand the real necklace to an accomplice, Mrs. Greaves, under guise of protecting it. The maid's guilt would appear petty theft, shielding the intellectual mastermind. Confronted, Professor Sandwich deflated like a punctured bellows. He confessed, staggering gambling debts, a contact in Antwerp eager for historical jewels, and a plan hatched the moment he saw Lady Aldridge boarding in London. "I enlisted Greaves unintentionally," he sighed. "She surprised me after I pocketed the necklace, fearing for her ladyship. I convinced her we'd safeguard it until York, then return it to avoid panic. She trusted a man of letters. He hung his head. When you announced the dogs, I realized she'd panic and reveal everything. I would have slipped off the train during the bustle at York while blame fell on the maid. You're annoyingly perceptive, Miss Reynolds. Lady Aldridge was summoned to hear the confession. She regarded Sandwich coolly. I hope, she said, you write letters better than you plot thefts. Railway police boarded at the next siding to take Sandwich into custody. Mrs. Greaves, exonerated, wept relief. Clara watched through the window as the professor, now subdued, was led away across gravel ballast. Steam hissed like a closing curtain. In the Bell's final stretch to York, sunlight streamed through windows, gilding upholstery, passengers exhaling collective tension. Clara, sitting once again in the lounge with a fresh pot of Earl Grey, finished her post. Every journey tells a story, but some trains whistle into legend. On the Belgravia Bell, topaz glimmered, loyalties were tested, and justice rode the rails. Lesson for fellow wanderers. Sometimes the most thrilling destination is the truth discovered between stations. She clicked save just as the cathedral spires of York appeared beyond the glass. The bell slowed, brakes singing. Journey's end and deadline had been met. As passengers rose to disembark, Lady Aldridge approached, necklace secure, eyes twinkling. Miss Reynolds, would you care to join me at the Historical Society Gala tonight? I believe you've earned a more uplifting story than larceny. Clara smiled, tucking notebook into her satchel. I'd be delighted, Lady Aldridge. Though I warn you, where I go, stories follow. The old woman laughed. Then let us hope for a quiet evening, for once. Yet as Clara stepped onto the platform, inhaling the mingled scents of coal smoke and autumn leaves, she felt that familiar flutter. Adventure found her easily, but so did clarity. Travel isn't merely about places, it's about people, secrets, and the exhilaration of bringing hidden things to light. And aboard the Belgravia Bell, she had discovered all three before the final stop.